جمعية المهندسين المصريين. نعم، إنهم المهندسون المصريون، مهما تباعدت بهم المسافات وفرقت بينهم وبين بلدهم الصحارى والجبال والبحار والمحيطات، يبقى ترابطهم وتوحدهم واصطفافهم يميزهم حيثما ذهبوا وأينما كانوا. وهنا في المملكة العربية السعودية وفي العاصمة الرياض على وجه الخصوص نشأ كيان على درجة من الاحترافية والإبداع تحت مسمى جمعية المهندسين المصريين. انطلق عام 2005 ميلادية ليحقق أهداف كوكبة من المهندسين المصريين بالسعودية وطموحاتهم، ويحول أحلامهم إلى حقائق ملموسة على أرض الواقع. ويظل عام التأسيس 2005 ميلادية عاما مشهودا في تاريخ المهندسين المصريين بالسعودية، ومحطة ناجحة تلتها محطات أخرى من الريادة والتميز عبر هيكلة مجلس الإدارة والشعب والتخصصات المختلفة، من كهرباء، مدنية، ميكانيكا، عمارة، تقنية معلومات واللجان المتعددة، حتى أصبحت جمعية المهندسين المصريين هي الممثلة الوحيدة لنقابة المهندسين المصرية بالمملكة العربية السعودية. وفي هذا السياق وثقت روابط التعاون مع الكيانات التي تهتم بالمهندس جميعها لتحافظ على تميزه وترفع من قدره وتعزز من دوره الريادي في ممارسة مهنته وأداء واجبه. وقد تكللت هذه الجهود المخلصة جميعا بحصول جمعية المهندسين المصريين بالسعودية على شهادة الآيزو 9001 نظير ما التزمت به من معايير ومواصفات الجودة العالمية.
فكرة تأسيس جمعية المهندسين بدأت في أواخر سنة 2005. الحمد لله نجحنا في تأسيسها في ديسمبر 2005. حطينا أسس إن احنا نرتقي بالمهندس المصري وقدراته، فركزنا في الفترة الأولانية إن احنا نعمل أكبر قدر ممكن من الدورات التدريبية نرتقي بها بالمهندس المصري. وبعدين ركزنا على محور الاجتماعي، يبقى في علاقات بين المهندسين وأسرهم في لقاءات دورية. والمحور الثالث اللي ركزنا عليه ان احنا نعمل حدث تقني كبير يجمع بين المهندسين المصريين ويكون نواه لالتقائهم بالشركات الكبرى. وقدرنا نعمل اول مؤتمر للمهندسين واللي استمر بعد كده لحد الآن.
حققت جمعية المهندسين المصريين بالسعودية بفضل الله أولا، ثم بجهود كوادرها وشبابها نقلة نوعية في سبيل التميز المهني عبر تنظيم العديد من الدورات المهنية الحديثة والمحاضرات العلمية المتخصصة، وتشجيع ودعم الأعضاء على متابعة دراساتهم العليا والتواصل مع الجمعيات العلمية والمهنية محليا ودوليا في مجال تخصص الأعضاء، والاستفادة من إمكاناتها في دعم روادها علميا ومهنيا، ومد جسور التواصل مع الجهات الرسمية والهندسية في مصر والمملكة. ويبقى من أهم ما سعت الجمعية لتحقيقه توثيق التواصل المجتمعي بين المهندسين المصريين بالسعودية من خلال الرعاية الاجتماعية والترفيهية، إذ عمقت مفهوم التكافل الاجتماعي بين أعضاء الجمعية، وقدمت نموذجا رائعا في تحقيق سلسلة من الأهداف الاجتماعية من خلال اليوم الاجتماعي لأسر المهندسين وتواصله بشكل منتظم لإيجاد مناخ ثقافي اجتماعي رياضي ترفيهي مصري تغلب عليه نكهة المحافظة على روح الأصالة والانتماء للوطن الأم.
كان لابد من تطوير جمعية المهندسين بعد التأسيس، فكان لابد من تعديل اللائحة الداخلية للجمعية لضبط عملية المسؤوليات والعلاقات بين أعضاء مجلس الإدارة وهيئة المكتب والشؤون الإدارية والشؤون المالية. وبحمد الله تم توسيع دائرة المشاركة لجميع المهندسين بإضافة الشعب الهندسية في اللائحة ووضع الضوابط الخاصة بكل شعبة. وكان للعمل الداخلي المنظم لابد من حصول الجمعية على شهادة الجودة، فبحمد الله تم الحصول على شهادة الأيزو 9001 ل 2008، وبذلك قد استكملنا المنظومة الداخلية المنظمة المؤسسية الكيان القائم لجمعية المهندسين المصريين بالمملكة.
تبنت الجمعية العديد من الأهداف والخطط الاستراتيجية الثابتة التي تعمل على إنجازها وفق ضوابط ولوائح الجمعية، وأخرى متغيرة حسب ظروف وقتها وتحقيقها، لعل من أبرزها الارتقاء بالمستوى العلمي والمهني للمهندسين والمحافظة على كرامة المهنة، ووضع تطبيق الأسس الكفيلة بتنظيم ممارسة المهنة وأداء أعضاء الجمعية لواجباتهم في خدمة البلاد ومراقبة تنفيذها، كذلك تنظيم المؤتمرات والندوات العلمية التي تخدم المهنة وتسهم في تطوير العمل الهندسي وتوطين التقنية، ولعل انطلاقة الملتقى السنوي الهندسي منذ عام 2009 وتواصله بلا انقطاع رغم الكثير من المتغيرات التي شهدتها المنطقة دليل راسخ على مهنية واحترافية العمل بالجمعية والابتعاد التام عن مناطق الخلافات والاختلافات الأيديولوجية والسياسية.
بعد مرحلة التأسيس المرحلة الأولى وتلتها المرحلة الثانية التطوير والاستقرار الداخلي، كان لابد من انطلاقة مكملة ثالثة لتحقيق الهدف المنشود، وهو أن يكون المهندس المصري فخورا بوطنه وفخرا له. كان لابد من مد أطر التعاون مع مجموعة من الهيئات العلمية والأكاديمية والمهنية الأخرى خارج المملكة العربية السعودية. كان التركيز الأوسع أو الأكبر فيها في مصر، فكان بروتوكول تعاون في المستوى العلمي والتطوير المهني مع جامعة حلوان، وكانت بروتوكول تعاون مع الأكاديمية العربية، وكان بروتوكول تعاون مع مركز بحوث البناء والإسكان، وكان بروتوكول تعاون مع الاتحاد المصري للمقاولات التشييد والبناء وعدة هيئات علمية أخرى. هذا كله ليصب في صالح رفع قيمة وقدر ومهارة المهندس المصري المقيم في المملكة العربية السعودية. ولعل سجل النشاط في خلال عام 2015 الزاخر والعامر بالكثير من الدورات المهنية والمحاضرات العلمية والاستكمال سلسلة المؤتمرات التي بدأت منذ المؤتمر الأول عام 2009 إلى المؤتمر الثامن القادم في مايو 2016 إن شاء الله، خير دليل على ما نصبو إليه وما نسعى إليه والجهود المبذولة في هذا الصدد.
ونحن على موعد مع الملتقى السنوي الثامن، والذي يستمر على نهجه الثابت لتصب كل الفعاليات والرؤى والدراسات في إضافة الجديد والمفيد، لتكون الهندسة بحق رافد العطاء الأول للأوطان والأكثر التصاقا بالاحتياج الفعلي للمواطن العربي في عالمنا المعاصر. وبهدف عالي القيمة عنونت الجمعية نوافذها الإعلامية بأن يكون المهندس المصري فخورا بوطنه وفخرا له، وتحت ظلال قيمها الوارفة والراسخة: تواصل، ترابط، احترافية، أمانة، انتماء. استمر نغم هذه المنظومة الإبداعية لتواصل تأدية دورها الريادي المشهود في الاهتمام بالمهندس المصري ورفع مستواه المهني والتقني. وتعاهد الجمعية روادها وجميع المهندسين المصريين بالسعودية أن تواصل دورها الطموح وتبقى دائما جمعية مهنية اجتماعية رائدة ومتطورة، تعمل على تحقيق طموحات أعضائها وتميزهم. وفي هذا السبيل، وانطلاقا من تمثيلها لنقابة المهندسين، عقدت الجمعية بالمملكة عدة اتفاقيات تعاون مع العديد من الجهات والهيئات العلمية والهندسية والمهنية، مثل جامعة حلوان والمركز القومي لبحوث البناء والإسكان والأكاديمية العربية للعلوم والتكنولوجيا والاتحاد المصري للمقاولين. وفي الطريق المزيد والمزيد من أجل البحث في كيفية تيسير سبل التطور والتقدم ورفع المستوى العلمي والمهني للمهندس المصري المقيم بالمملكة، وأيضا من أجل إيجاد الفرص المناسبة وفتح نوافذ المعرفة لتصل للمهندسين المصريين المقيمين في المملكة وفق الدور الرائد الذي تقوم به الهيئات والمنظمات المصرية في مجال العمل الهندسي وتطويره في المحيط العربي. جمعية المهندسين المصريين بالسعودية.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. الأخوة الأفاضل، أهلا ومرحبا بحضراتكم جميعا في ليلة جديدة من ليالي مبادرة تواصل تطوير، والتي تنظمها جمعية المهندسين المصريين بالمملكة العربية السعودية بالتعاون مع المركز القومي لبحوث الإسكان والبناء، وهي التي انطلقت في أبريل من العام 2020. ووعدنا الليلة إن شاء الله على المحاضرة أو اللقاء رقم 220، ويأتي وفاء لوعد وعدنا به الدكتور عارف عطية من خلال محاضرته رقم 216، وكانت بعنوان دور المراصد الحضرية في تقرير التنمية المستدامة بالمدن. فوعدنا أنه يشغل منصب عضو اللجنة التوجيهية للمرصد الحضري العالمي التابع للأمم المتحدة، وعدنا باستضافة رئيس وسكرتير اللجنة. فأنا نشرف اليوم بحضور الدكتور كارلا-لين واشبورن، الأستاذ المشارك بكلية لندن الجامعية، قسم العلوم والتكنولوجيا والهندسة والسياسة العامة، وهي رئيس اللجنة التوجيهية للمرصد الحضري العالمي التابع لموئل الأمم المتحدة، وهي باحثة متعددة التخصصات وممارس ومعلمة في مجال التفاعل بين العلوم الفيزيائية والاجتماعية والسياسة العامة. ويسعى عملها إلى فهم وتحسين عملية صنع القرار والتخطيط في المناطق الحضرية مع التركيز على قضايا البيئة الحضرية والاستدامة. وهي أيضا باحثة مشاركة في مرصد منطقة مدينة شوتينغ في جوهانسبرغ، وعضو في مختبر الابتكار والسياسة الحضرية بجامعة كاليفورنيا في لوس أنجلوس، وعملت سابقا في المكتب البرلماني البريطاني للعلوم والتكنولوجيا كمستشار في العلوم الفيزيائية وتكنولوجيا المعلومات والاتصالات. وضيفنا الثاني هو الدكتور دينيس موانيكي، سكرتير اللجنة، وهو خبير في البيانات المكانية في قسم البيانات والتحليلات في موئل الأمم المتحدة، حيث يقوم بتنسيق مبادرات إنتاج البيانات المختلفة ودمج المعلومات الجغرافية المكانية والتقنيات الناشئة في عمليات المراقبة الحضرية، وهو منسق برنامج الأمم المتحدة للمستوطنات البشرية لشبكة جيو نت. وطبعا عراب هذا اللقاء وأتيح له المجال لإدارته من خلال لكونه أولا هو شرف لنا وأن يتواجد معنا الدكتور عارف عطية الشمندي،
وهو محاضرنا في المحاضرة التي أشرت إليها رقم 216، وهو عضو اللجنة. هو خبير في تطوير التخطيط العمراني والمراصد الحضرية، وحصل على ماجستير في تطوير التراث العمراني ودكتوراه في العمران الحديث بالمدن الصحراوية، وعمل أيضا لدى العديد من المنظمات الدولية كخبير في العديد من التقارير والمشاريع، ومنها طبعا الأمم المتحدة وبرنامج إنمائي الأمم المتحدة، وعضو كما ذكرنا اللجنة التوجيهية للمراصد الحضرية بالأمم المتحدة، والمدير الإقليمي للمنطقة الوسطى بشركة AFM. في لقاء سينطلق بعد قليل بعنوان The Urban Observatory Model and its Application، يشرفنا فيه دكتور كارلا لين والدكتور دينيس والدكتور عارف عطية. يبدأ اللقاء الآن، وبعده في نهاية المحاضرة في مجال للنقاشات إن كان هناك حاجة لها وتوجد شهادة حضور للراغبين في الحصول عليها من خلال نموذج تقييم والحضور الذي ننشره بعد نهاية العرض التقديمي لضيوفنا الكرام. وهذا رد على استفسارات الزملاء على الشات. رابط الحضور والتقييم للحصول على الشهادة يتم نشره في نهاية العرض التقديمي لضيوفنا. دكتور عارف، دكتور كارلا، دكتور دينيس، ويلكم زيو. بتعرف المايك معك لإدارة اللقاء.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أستاذنكم إن المحاضرة الورك شوب هتبقى بالإنجلش عشان الدكاترة اللي معانا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to all of you. I'm very happy to have you today, all of you, especially my colleagues, Dr. Prof. Carla and Dr. Dennis. As you know, we have a previous session before 3 weeks ago. It was about the Urban Observatory and its role in sustainable development goals and achieving sustainability in the cities. In this presentation, we have discussed a lot of things. The discussion was very fruitful, and many of our colleagues asked about the role of the Urban Observatory and its applications. Also, we have discussed the steering committee and how it works. From this, we have the idea to invite the steering committee in this session, in the second session. I'm happy and honored to have Prof. Carla today, and Dennis, Prof. Carla, the chief of the steering committee, and Dennis is secretary of the steering committee and some data analytics section and the Global Urban Observatory. I will give them the floor to introduce themselves now, and we will start our presentation. Prof. Carla, please, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, I will. Can you hear me okay? Excellent.
Okay.
Let's see if you can.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Aref, and very glad to join you all. Yeah, I'll introduce myself briefly and hand it over to Dennis. I believe Dennis will have some more introductory things to say, but I am Carla Washbourne. I am an associate professor at University College London in the UK, but as already been introduced, I am chair of the steering committee of the Global Urban Observatory Network, which we'll talk about in the presentation and hopefully in the discussion afterwards, and have been working in and on urban observatories for about 8 years or so now. I'm also a research associate at the Gauteng City Region Observatory in Johannesburg. I hope that's okay by way of a quick introduction.
Thank you, Carla. We are honored to have you today. Dennis?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Aref, and I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
We will start by introducing yourself, and you can start the presentation. I know you will start the presentation at the workshop. So for that, I give you all the floor. To introduce yourself and start your presentation. I think you have to share your presentation also.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. In terms of introductions, I'm Dennis Mwaniki. I'm working with Habitat to the data analytics section, and I am the focal point for the Global Urban Observatory, and also the secretary to the steering committee that both Carla and yourself, Dr. Aref, sit on. I have a few introductory slides just to give a bit of an idea about what the observatories are about. And Carla is going to build on that after. Please let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, I see it. Everyone
Okay.
see the presentation, my colleagues, please, the partners. مهندس هشام شايفين الشاشة كويس؟
Clear, thank you, Doctor. Is clear. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
You can continue. Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Dr. It's really a very brief presentation that to just give an idea to participants and colleagues about what the Urban Observatory model is about and the different consistent parts and why we promote it and are working tirelessly to ensure that it works at the local level to the national levels. So in terms of why, or the history of it is that since UN Habitat's mandate is majorly to promote sustainable cities and human settlements, one thing we realized very early in the days was that availability of city-specific information was quite difficult, and the duplicity of partners who work in the urban space in the same city or in the same country was not very well coordinated. So we developed the Urban Observatory model really to enhance the availability of high quality data that was specific to cities and urban areas and that could be produced consistently across time and space, as well as to also support and promote the coordination of activities within cities and also at the national levels to ensure people are speaking with each other and also working towards the common goal of ensuring data was produced, but also used for decision-making processes. So the observatory model works across levels. The highest level at the national level, of course, within a country, the national level, which can be scaled down to subnational level regions, as well as local level, which majorly includes cities and urban areas. And usually this should be connected and tied to each other so that information flows from the national level to the regional level to the local city level, both downwards and also upwards. And in terms of what really an observatory is then it constitutes a local network of stakeholders, majorly, which is very important, as I mentioned. And the main purpose of this usually is to enhance the production, analysis, and use of information and data to support decision-making processes. So the key thing here is the linkage for observatories really is not just a data process, but it is a way to enhance informed decision-making or data-driven decision-making at the local level and continuity of the production processes from understanding what the needs are to measuring what is being done, but also the cycle of seeing after you intervene, then what are the impacts of the interventions. So the specific aims of the observatory then is to create the sustainable urban monitoring systems in local levels as well as the subnational and international levels to strengthen the local capacities for data production at the local level, and of course, production of disaggregated data, a very important component of the observatories. Our belief as UN Habitat is that the more you empower local communities and local stakeholders to be able to track and monitor, as well as to promote decision-making processes, the more impact you attain in the short term, but also in the long term, because there'll be continuity. And then the last aim of the objective of the observatories is, of course, to promote local ownership of indicator systems, but also data and its use for decision-making processes. So the observatories have 5 main components, which usually are not separate, but really work together. The first and perhaps most important of all is what we call the stakeholder network. As I mentioned earlier, one key thing that happens in cities and countries is that we have many parts that are moving. You have, say, for example, within a city, people are working, for example, in infrastructure, that people working on health, people working on education. And you also have on the other side, of course, the people who are making decisions, many times who are political leaders. And the observatory aims to bring all these people and stakeholders together, and of course also not forgetting private sector institutions and other external partners who come in to help city processes. So the model here, this component aims to bring these different stakeholders together and ensure that they are speaking from the same voice and can set a similar goal to work together towards attainment of the vision of the city or the subnational level or the national level, depending on what scale the urban observatory is being developed at. Of course, the second most important thing is the data. Urban observatories are data system oriented. And the idea is that you need to have an indicator framework that gets monitored. And many times we promote the integration of global indicator systems with local priorities so that you can be able to produce information that can be used to report on global processes, but also importantly to assess the local priorities and ensure that the decisions that are made at the local level are informed by the available data or data that gets collected continuously. Then, of course, with the data and the stakeholder, you need a place to disseminate information. And here's where the data dissemination platform comes in. And there are many examples, of course, including regions like Qassim, where you have a very nice, Qassim in Saudi Arabia, where you have very nice, and Shakia, where you have very nice data platforms where information from the urban observatories gets disseminated. And importantly, remember all these things, we are really doing them to support decision-making processes. So we have what we call the decision support interface. And here it's really a way to summarize things for policymakers and also give access to them to understand what the key findings are or what the key emerging issues are, as well as a way to engage communities. For example, in cases where you want to seek public opinion or inputs to decision-making processes, then an observatory can really provide for such a system or interface to allow people to participate in the decision-making and investments in their city. Then at the bottom, you have a very important component, which is the urban observatory support system. And here is where you need, we have the Urban Observatory Steering Committee and the Global Urban Observatory Network, where you have the different types of support coming in, either from donors or from the larger network observatories, where observatories in different countries can learn from each other, as well as where UNHabitat provides the overall guidance and certification on how the observatories work and the key guiding principles, of course, on data and conversion of data to useful information. Then I mentioned the different levels already of the observatory. Perhaps the three key ones that I just want to remind you is within a country, you can have a national urban observatory system that you can be scaled down to regional, subnational level, which could be maybe regions or districts, depending on the context of the country. And at the bottom, we have the local urban observatories. And this is where a lot of activities for urban observatories happen, where you have cities and urban areas really creating urban observatories to guide their different processes according to the 5 main areas that I just mentioned in the previous slide. So these different levels are connected with the Global Urban Observatory Network at the top, which is the global coordination mechanism that is hosted by UNHabitat, and where a lot of the overall coordination of the activities, but also experiences sharing get implemented. So we have the bottom-up sort of process where you have localization of the global agendas and monitoring for those agendas for city-specific actions, as well as where the bottom-up process where you have the local observatory network and systems contributing to the national processes, but also to the global activities. Then just to highlight quickly that in terms of the data component, UN Habitat has developed what we call the Global Urban Monitoring Framework, and we see this as a way to guide urban observatories on how to assess city status, but also be able to measure progress between one time period to another. And what the framework itself has done is to get the SDG 11, the Sustainable Development Goal 11 priority, which is to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And we've broken this into 5 domains and what we call 4 city objectives. And the idea is very simple. We say if we want to attain sustainability, there are 5 main areas for which cities need to work on. The first one is the issue of society or people. You need your people in cities to be prosperous, and the larger community to be prosperous and attain different level, at least a certain level of sustainability for you to say that you moving towards attaining the sustainable development goals. The second area is the area of economy. Of course, you cannot attain sustainability if you are not performing well economically, or at least not putting measures to ensure economic prosperity. The third is the area of environment. And obviously, environment is one of the key pillars of the sustainable development goals. And 2 additional things which traditionally have been ignored. One is culture. Let's say cities have different cultures, and this needs to be appreciated and acknowledged as we build consensus and also make investments toward the sustainability. And the last item is on the governance. You cannot achieve all this without really having or putting in place governance mechanisms to allow you to progress or move towards the targets and goals you want to achieve. So on the other side, we have split this the 4 objectives, and you say for you to attain the 5 main domains, then you need also to consider specific things: peace and safety, inclusivity, resilience, and all this build to sustainability. A very basic, perhaps example is to say you cannot attain economic prosperity if you are not creating peaceful and safe places for people to do business, for example. The same way, you cannot attain sustainability if the different groups of people in the city are not really feeling included. So if you do not include young people, women, children in your planning and development processes, then you really you miss the point of attaining sustainability. So this framework really summarizes this, and within each of the boxes where the domains and objectives intersect, we have different indicators which cities can monitor, and this can build into accumulation of analysis to understand which of the domains are doing well or which of the objectives are doing well, and that can also inform what policies and actions are needed. And importantly, just to finish on this slide, is that while this is a global guidance, we of course allow cities and countries to also include what is priority for them. So if a city prioritizes something that perhaps is not fully captured here, then you have flexibility to build up on this and say these are basics, and you can include your own local priorities to be able to collect information that is useful and use it for collective actions and decision making at the local level. So here, just to show you that with the framework, and of course the framework in this case is something that a local urban observatory can fully implement, of course using its data systems in the 5 main areas I discussed earlier. And here you can then use it to understand where you are across the different domains and objectives based on the indicators, and you can see what gaps are existing in relation to where you want to go. So another example here, perhaps if you want to achieve environmental sustainability. For example, say you want to increase the number of green space in a city, then you use your indicators that you measure based on the framework to understand where you currently stand, and you can benchmark against the global thresholds or targets, and all locally set targets, and say maybe you want to increase green areas by 20 or 30%. Then you can use this to really track the gap you have, and also the actions then you need to implement. So the framework really can help observatories to connect their local monitoring needs to the data, and also setting the targets and actions. Again, just jumping back to the observatories at large, we have the Global Urban Observatory Network that Carla will talk a bit about, and also the governance of this network. So the network really, the intention of it is to bring together observatories that are operating in different countries, in different continents, in different settings or setups, and bring them together to share experiences, but also to be able to speak to each other and learn from each other, as well as build also the others' ability to be able to solve problems that are cutting across. So the network has different activities, and some of these include the overall provision of technical guidance, information sharing, supporting, of course, partnerships, and also the integrations of policy making processes. And it's managed through the steering committee that Carla heads, and that Dr. Aref is also a member of. Of course, UNHABITAT is the focal point for the Global Urban Observatory Network. Our work really is to support different initiatives at the local level, as well as the coordination of the global level activities. And here we support the setup and capacity development with cities and national systems, supporting, of course, dissemination of the monitoring frameworks. And here I just talked about the urban monitoring framework. Assessing, helping observatories and local systems to assess the needs, as well as promoting partnership. And we also provide certification for urban observatories that are part of the network. And finally, just to tell you that you can learn more about the Urban Observatory, how it's governed, as well as contact us and reach out if you have any questions by visiting the website of the Urban Observatories that I'm sharing on the screen. And I believe the slides will also be distributed to everyone in case you want to have a reference point for that. So thank you, and back to you, Dr. Over. I don't know whether I was speaking to myself or anyone else here.
Dr. Aref?
Carla, did
Dr. Carla?
Okay.
Yes, would you like to hand it over to me? I'm happy to jump in. I wasn't sure if we were going to back to Dr. Aref for the questions, or shall I start?
I don't know because I see Dr. Aref is muted. I'm not sure what is proposed.
As I recognize from Dr. Aref, Dr. Carla can proceed, please.
Please, Engineer Sameh, can we take the question from the raised hand, Engineer Khaled Zahran?
Engineer Khaled.
Can you unmute me? Yes.
Engineer Khaled?
Yes.
Could you please open the mic?
Yes, I already did. This is Engineer Khaled Zahran speaking from Egypt. Thanks for Dr. Dennis and Dr. Aref and Dr. Carla for this good networking with the crowd of experts. My question to Dr. Dennis is going to be just two tracks. The first one, in one of his slides, he makes some, I think in the organization of the second or third slide, as far as I remember, there was NU and BU. So if there is a communication between the universities and the cities in a local country, could this be interpreted to go beyond the local country and go further to other university and cities in another countries? I mean, is there a possibility for networking between the universities in a local country with the universities with the other country and so on? This is one question. The second question is regarding the certificates. I think, as far as I remember, in the last slide, in the platform construction, there was on the right side there was certificates. Could you, Dr. Dennis, could you please show which kind of certificate? Is it LEED or Brilliant or whatever kind of certificates are there in the UN habitat? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I lost the connection. Aref with you. I lost the connection. I'm back again. Thank you, Mr. Dennis, for your nice presentation. It was great and assuring about the data and its importance and the main domains and objectives for the Urban Observatory. It was clear. And I think if you prefer to have all the questions after the meeting, after the two presentation, or you want to have it by presentation? Dennis, you and Carla.
For me, I'm open, whichever is easy. It might be interesting maybe for Carla to also make a presentation. Then we can take all the questions at once, perhaps.
Yeah, because I am afraid about losing the time and the questions, because I'm sure my colleagues have a lot of questions. For that, I want to just ask the questions already asked. And we will start with Carla, and we will take the rest of questions and discussion after the meeting, after the presentation.
Sure. Maybe, Dr. Aref, I got the two questions, so no problem. So maybe Carla can make a presentation, then we can answer the questions at once. Carla,
that's okay. It's okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Tariq. We will wait after the presentation of Carla, and we will answer your question, of course.
Sure.
Carla, please, you have the floor.
Yes, let me try. So I'm going to just try to share my slides, which I hope, are you able to see?
Yeah, okay, it's okay.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, so I will try to go through these relatively swiftly so we have lots of time for questions at the end. And I will try to pick up on at least the questions that have been asked as well. I think some of what I'm going to say starts to answer that a little bit, the question around universities and the kind of collaboration there. So just to begin with, and moving on directly from what Dennis has already said, a little bit about the Global Urban Observatories Network Steering Committee. So as we've introduced, I'm part of the steering committee, as is Dr. Aref. The committee is something which is actually quite recent. So we've only really been working this year as part of the steering committee. And we can talk, I'm sure, a bit more if you'd like to, if it would be interesting, about why we established a committee, of the history, I suppose, of the establishment of the committee. But the reason that we established the committee was really to help give kind of guidance on short and long-term vision for the activities of the Global Urban Observatory Network. So there are many observatories that are members of this. Many have been members for some time. And of course, there are lots of new observatories starting and lots of new members joining. But really, the steering committee was a body that was trying to give a sense of vision to what the network could be and what those opportunities for networking between these different bodies across the world could be. So there's 4 different areas that we look into as a steering committee. We look at sort of strategic direction of the network as a whole. We look at the sustainability of the network. So I think that goes hand in hand actually with network building. So that we have members who are engaged, that we're able to do things collaboratively that are of interest, and to bring people together to have conversations about what they're doing, but also to develop our collective capacities in supporting decision making and supporting progress in our cities, and events and activities. So deciding the best ways in which we might bring people within the network and observatories in the network together virtually. So we've had a number of online events where we've shared knowledge and insights, but also hopefully in person as well. And we've had meetings prior to the steering committee at the World Urban Forum for some years now, where urban observatories have come together, and there's been a session, but the steering committee, it's hoped, gives a bit more momentum to that and allows us to plan a bit more for those in-person events that we would have at things like the World Urban Forum. So just very quickly, the committee is a maximum of 10 members. Those members come from different parts of the existing urban observatories networks, institutional representatives from Habitat, so Dennis and colleagues, representation from 8 observatories globally. And in my next slide, I will show you just quickly who the members are of the network now, so you can get a sense of where that membership reaches to, and 1 ex officio member who is a champion of urban observatories work around the world. So as I've said, it's the first committee. We've only just come in this year, but the aspiration is that we will be members for 2 years, and that membership is rotational, so that there is an opportunity for different organizations within the network to come in and serve on the committee, bringing their ideas and energy and representation of the particular issues that they are representing geographically or regionally. So very quickly, I hope this is progressing. Let me know if the slide did not change just now. But this is a snapshot of the Global Urban Observatory Steering Committee for 2023 to 25. There's myself based in London at UCL, my co-chair, Mr. Rashid Sidat, who's based at the Hudson City Region Observatory in Johannesburg, and Dennis, of course, who you've just heard from now, who's based at UN Habitat. And the members of the committee include Professor Michele Acuto, who's based in Melbourne, Australia, Nosheen Anwar, who's in Karachi, Aref, who you know well and have heard from in his introduction already, Maria Eugenia is in Buenos Aires. I will skip quickly over David Simon, because I'll say a little bit more about him in a moment, but Carla-Leanne, who's in Krakow in Poland, and Delilah Godbain, who's joined us recently from Perspective in Brussels in Belgium. And the ex officio member, the member who is the champion of the network, is Professor David Simon. So he was the director of a project called Mistra Urban Futures, which ran from 2014 to 2019, and actually was across a number of different cities and countries. That was based in Gothenburg, but he's now based in the UK. So just as I say, to give a bit of a sense of who's part of the network now, and what different areas and what sorts of institutions we're representing as well. As you can see, it's a mix of observatories by name, observatories by function, like the Karachi Urban Lab, and Perspective Brussels, and academic and research institutions as well. So just quickly, what I wanted to speak through were a few insights on the observatories model from some of the research that we've been doing. So of course, I'm part of the steering committee, but I'm also a researcher and an educator at University College London, and we have been doing research on urban observatories. And that research has been focused on trying to understand what that model actually means in practice. And I hope this will be of interest to you as people who are interested in the model itself, and are perhaps interested in the practicalities of how other bodies have become observatories and how they function as observatories. So I'll talk quickly through a few case studies. They are all based on this project called Shaping Informed Cities, which has run from 2017 until the present day. This project has a number of different collaborators, including Habitat, the Hudson City Region Observatory, the University of Melbourne. And what this work is thought to do, as I've said, is try to understand what observatories are, what observatories are doing, and how this model has been most helpful in informing decision-making in cities, but also the variety and diversity that we can find within the observatory's network. And there's a few things that I'm drawing from in the next few slides, including the experiences that we've had. This is one of the events that we had at the World Urban Forum quite some years ago now. This was in Kuala Lumpur, in publications that we've made academically, including the one you can see at the bottom here around a particular case study of the Halfling City region, and of this comparative review that we did of observatories that was published in 2021. There were lots of people involved. This is by way of an acknowledgement slide, so everybody doesn't get sort of put to the end of the presentation and not fully acknowledged. As I say, there are many people who are involved in this work across the different institutions, and I acknowledge and thank all of you, and I'm sure there are many more actually who are not captured here and who have been a big part of this work. So quickly, the comparative review work that I'm speaking to was a piece of concerted research work that was done over around 2 years leading up to the publication in 2021. And what this sought to do was look at publicly available information that we could find on the internet about urban observatories. So we went and searched and found the different kinds of documents, the different kinds of reports, the websites that observatories had produced. We went to have a look at those, and as I'll explain on the next few slides, processed those and analyze those in a certain way to try to understand what observatories were doing, what they'd been up to. But we also spoke to people working in these observatories as well. So the map here is a tiny slice of observatories globally. This, I think at the time that we did the research, was fewer than 10% of the members of the network, but this was a sort of manageable number to do those more in-depth interviews with. So we spoke to people within these institutions to understand, as I say, what their day-to-day activities look like, and what we could learn from that. So of those observatories that we did more detailed work with, we understood that most of them are housed within universities. About 56% were housed physically or virtually within universities. A number were hosted within governments, so about 16%. And there was one example that we found that was co-hosted between university and government. But there were many bodies that were also distinguish themselves as being independent from either a pure university or government hosting. I'll say is actually, I know that it's not explicitly there, but there were questions as well around how these institutions were funded. And that tended to go quite closely in parallel with where the institutions were housed. So many were funded through something that looks like perhaps a more standard sort set of research funding that a university would bid for and would win. Some were funded by grants from government, be that local or be that central government. Some were a combination, but much, much fewer were a combination of funding streams. And I'll talk a little bit in the case studies just now about this. Most of the observatories generate a wide range of different outputs. So as Dennis has already alluded to, there are things that are particularly interesting and valuable to know about cities. And actually, most observatories were really producing lots of different things, including data sets, reports, briefings. Some were even producing academic research publications. And most of these did make efforts to make these publicly available. In terms of the sorts of topics that observatories were focusing on, we asked about this as well. The vast majority looked at environmental sustainability as a very primary topic, but also looked at issues like housing, land management, infrastructure, governance, mobility, and social justice, as well as a number of other issues. I should note that this research was done, as I say, prior to 2021. So actually health is now a much more significant focus for observatories. But at the time, that was one of the less significant thematic areas that observatories were looking at. But yeah, this is absolutely escalated over the last 3 to 4 years. And many observatories, as Dennis has said, whilst they're situated, and we're talking about the local level urban observatories here within a particular city or a particular city region, the vast majority of them, as well as looking at issues at a neighborhood level, a city level, or a metropolitan level are also very invested and very interested in operating at national and international level as well. So it's not that observatories are only looking at issues in their particularly local area, but most of them did tend to be looking at this range of scales as well, and engaging at this range of different scales. So very swiftly, I've got three snapshots or case studies of observatories that I thought would be helpful to go through. There were so many different examples; it was difficult to choose actually. So, as I say, I'm happy to speak about these more, but we can talk more broadly about other examples that we've seen and familiar with globally. So the Housing City Region Observatory I'm most familiar with because I'm now part of it. I am a research associate there, so I should disclose that. But this observatory was established in 2008. It's one of the longer-lived observatories in the network. So observatories do tend to have a particular lifespan, which is often tied to their funding, to their sponsors, to the places that they're housed. But the GCRO has existed, as I say, for quite some time now, since 2018, and is a partnership between two universities, actually. So between the University of Johannesburg and the University of the Witwatersrand, both in Johannesburg physically, but also the Gauteng provincial government. And since this point, actually, there's more and more relationship with other local government actors as well as the provincial government. What's interesting about GCRO, I think, is they are physically based in the building that we can see here, actually in the photo. So they're based in a building owned by and managed by the University of the Witwatersrand, but their funding stream, their main funding stream actually comes from provincial government. So they have managed to have this collaborative agreement in funding, resourcing and housing of the people who are working within the observatory and the observatory itself. And everybody is actually also a staff member of both of the universities too. So there is a sort of in-kind relationship with the institutions. The mission really of the GCRO was to improve cooperation between different levels and branches of provincial government, as well as between, as I've said, the different local governments that work in this area. And the Gauteng City region is sort of the economic heartland of South Africa, really. So it includes Johannesburg, but includes a number of other cities and suburban areas connecting those cities, as well as the more rural regions around. So the city region is quite large and quite a diverse area. So yeah, one of the aspirations is to really connect the region and provide this kind of integrated, coherent, sustainable and inclusive region, and really think about generating data and insight to support that. Originally, it was established much more as a research centre, producing outputs which they hoped would find interesting, as they say here, interested and absorptive audiences in government. But actually, this has strengthened and evolved over time since 2008, and actually now GCRO are much more involved in a convening role as an intermediary between the research communities in South Africa and decision makers. A couple of other case studies, as I say, so again, drawn from this report, which I'm very happy to share the link to for anybody who's interested in reading that in more detail. But of course, the slides, as we've said, will be shared anyway. Is the Indian Institute for Human Settlement based in Bangalore in India. I think 2008 was a good year for founding observatories. So they were founded in 2008, again, by collaboration, actually, in this case, the individuals from government, private sector and civil society. And it brings together elements of practice, policy and scholarship on urban research. So whilst the sort of decade-long work that's been done by IAHS is now incredibly visible internationally and nationally, and really has done a lot to elevate the story of human settlements in India. There are many, many other things that have come out of this observatory type organization as well. So there is a core agenda that they have to integrate different systems within the country level in India that they see as being approached quite disparately. So they look at these different transitional transformational themes, including systems and infrastructure, environment sustainability, governance, human development, and economic development. And interestingly, I think IAHS has been primary training institution, so for more than 4 years in 2021, so actually longer than that now, for civil servants working at all different career levels, working in urban issues. So yeah, a really kind of multifaceted institution doing both kind of observatory functions of collecting data, generating knowledge insights, bringing different strands together to inform decision making, but also very directly involved in training of individuals as well. And the final example, Karachi Urban Lab, founded in 2018 in Karachi, Pakistan, is housed in an academic institution, so in the Department of Social Sciences and Liberal Arts, the Institute of Business Administration in Karachi. What this lab is seeking to do is to foster connection between different actors in research, teaching, and public policy to promote development, particularly urban rural development. So this is something that they are very focused on as an institution, and strongly on issues of social justice and equity in infrastructure services, as this delivery and housing within Karachi. The projects that it does are rather different, and they dominantly with community members, activists, policymakers, and academics. And the work that they do by creating visual imagery, so they're quite visually based, using photography and mapping and these sorts of elements to try to give those more marginalized voices within a city a platform to show views, feelings, visions for the future, and their experiences of how their lives in the city are, and have been very active in trying to communicate this both within those communities described there, but also in getting these voices out in media campaigns, including print media and social media. So yeah, just to finalize by saying a couple of things. So the comparative review, as I've already alluded to, which came out in 2021, was a fascinating piece of work to be involved in anyway. But in the process of doing this review, of course, we had the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so there were a number of pieces of work that actually ran eventually in parallel to the work that we were doing to generate this particular set of insights, including some work on urban observatories and COVID-19. Some of that very particularly looking at the response to COVID, but also drawing broader findings from the relationship that observatories had had with the COVID pandemic to understand actually how institutions like observatories can react when crises happen, and how observatories stepped in different ways to the decision-making space in order to support cities to make decisions during particularly the very beginning of the crisis around the COVID-19 pandemic. So again, there's a number of resources on that for anybody who's interested in finding out more, and I can share those again at the end. But yeah, just to say, we were fascinated in seeing that actually observatories could pivot, and did pivot in many cases around the world, from institutions that were working in the sort of day-to-day of their cities, dealing with the way that cities were operating in this sort of steady state, if that's an appropriate way to describe it, because we all know that cities are these hugely changeable and diverse places anyway, but then actually that observatories were able to respond to a crisis event like the COVID-19 pandemic, many of them becoming preferred suppliers of knowledge and insight to decision makers within the city, being commissioned to do work very rapidly, very kind of rapid response work that they perhaps had not done before, but actually being seen as incredibly valuable because they were institutions that had a great memory of what had been done in previous crises. They had great stores of data that were able to be drawn upon in ways that they hadn't been used before, but actually became really helpful during the pandemic to understand actually what did it mean for the city when movements were being changed, where you had to have a great spatial understanding of where people would normally be and how you might govern or change that with the governance that came in around COVID-19 in many cities. I'm going to move on because as I say, I don't want to take too much time from the discussion. I think this is the last thing that I was going to remark on. But yeah, this project has really come to be focused much more on networking, sharing and capacity building across observatories. So just a few little snapshots here again, as I say, from the World Urban Forum events over the last few years, where we've brought together different actors from different observatories, different institutions in conversation to really talk about what the priority issues were for observatories at that point. And the last meeting that we had virtually of observatories over the summer, we have a lot of takeaways from that we're currently working on as a steering committee to take back to the network in terms of what people are seeing as their current issues and what we can do to create events, create documents, create opportunities for working together to really, strengthen our collective knowledge and insights, because we know that many others across the globe in observatories will have been encountering the same sorts of challenges. I think I will finish there. I thank you very much for your attention. I hope that was of interest, and I'm happy to come back to the room with all questions.
Okay, thank you, Carla. It's very interesting presentation. I like it. I like especially the comparative review. It was great, and the examples. It's very important to know, all of us to know that as we many times mentioned, that the Urban Observatory is a tool for the decision maker to make our life better. It's a tool for the universities or agencies, the governments, to have the data and analyze this data to better in taking the decisions and how to deal with this issues we are facing, such as pandemics or any other issues. Also, all the reports and the studies Carla mentioned and Dennis in their presentation, you will find all of this in our website with the Urban Observatory Network. We will start the discussion now, and I think we have already one question had been asked from Tariq. So Dennis, please, if you write the question, you can start replying this question, and we will take it to we'll take the other questions by the hands raised. Okay, Dennis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aref, and thanks, Carla. Again, a great presentation, of course, with very nice examples. So the question I think Dr. Ahmed asked, one was the opportunities for partnerships between universities within and also across countries. And the second one was on the certification. So on the first question on the universities, I think maybe it's nice that Carla also made a presentation now, because you can see from the steering committee itself, we already have like 50% of the people actually there from universities and academic institutions. So being part of the network definitely gives you an opportunity to be able to interact and find collaborations with other research institutions or universities across, not just within your country, but also across countries, as well as to also be able to interact with non-academic institutions, which are doing a lot of interesting and impactful work at the city level. And what we try to do is to maintain at least the database of the contacts, and you can really be able to talk to each other without having to pass through the steering committee or UN Habitat for you to talk to an observatory or focal point for different organizations. And you'd see in the website that you can already see the websites of the Urban Observatory Network website. You will find a profile of a lot of the observatories, and you have the website where you can already visit and see what they're doing. And if you're interested in a specific one, they always have the contact persons for that. The second question on the certification, what certificates we should issue. So currently we've been issuing certificates for the members of the Global Urban Observatory Network to certify that they are doing work that is directly aligned to the Global Urban Observatory model, and also following procedures and processes that align with the provisions and guidelines of the observatory system. But subsequently, we'll also be issuing certification for specific impactful initiatives that observatories are undertaking to acknowledge like work that is being done by observatories in very unique field. It could be in the area of research, could be in the area of using data for informed decision making, and so on and so forth. But that is something that is up in the pipeline. For now, we issue certificates only for the members of the network who are to show that they are doing work in alignment with the guidance of the observatory model. Back to you, Dr.
Thank you. Thank you. I see Mr. Ahmed Al-Antari. Please go ahead.
دكتور أحمد عطاري.
دكتور أحمد العنتاري اتفضل.
Okay, good evening.
Please
Hello.
introduce your, hello, yes, we are hearing you. Please introduce yourself and your question, please.
So this is Dr. Ahmed Al-Antari, a doctorate degree in construction and project management, and 2 master's degree in project management from the United States. Anyhow, my question now is, if there is any opportunity to participate in your research activities about the urban research, is it possible to join any research activity in one of the universities, especially with Dr. Carla? This is my first question. Second, the question is about how you are dealing with the governments. If you are making such research, are you direct to contact with the government? Are they appreciate your activities in such areas like social justice and like economics and other critical points? This is my question.
Okay, thank you. I will reply to your second question. The Urban Observatory, the Global Urban Observatory, and the steering committee, such as a technical umbrella for the Urban Observatory. We are dealing with the observatories by joining the observatories in the whole world to the network, and they will be participating in the events and in the studies done by the Global Urban Observatory. And about the first question for Carla, please, Carla, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in terms of getting involved in the research, we always have things ongoing. So I'm very happy to be contacted. Please just get in touch directly if you would like to be involved or to discuss things that we could do to collaborate in the research side. I'm very happy to do that. I don't know, I can contribute very quickly as well in terms of speaking or kind of working with governments when we're doing this research as well. So the in-depth piece that we did on the Gauteng City Region Observatory, actually, we did a number of conversations and interviews with people working in local and provincial government in the city region. And it was to understand if and how they were using the stuff that was coming from the observatory. And I think that was fascinating because I think a number of the people that we spoke to were appreciative and were using those materials that the observatory was generating. I think generally the overwhelming sense that we got was that they wanted more. So I think that was I think it's quite a nuanced relationship in the case, as I say, because that observatory has existed for about 15 years. I don't think it would have been the same at the beginning. But I think now, because of the time that has been taken and because of the sort of care to, I think, be a friend, to governments, even if sometimes being critical of them has meant that there's a positive relationship there, and that the government is quite receptive, and we're actually even quite happy to speak to us as researchers to understand, as I say, what influence or impact or benefit the observatory has had to them.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Khalid Zahran.
Can
Mr.
you
Khalid?
this is Khalid Zahran again. Thank you, Dr. Aref. My question is for
Welcome.
Dr. Carla regarding the let me say the sorry, I forgot it was two questions, but it was regarding the case studies that you already have. I as far as I remember, there was 3 case studies in South Africa and Karachi and Indonesia and in India. My question is, do you have like a selection criteria for your case study? I mean, do you have some kinds of questionnaires that you put some inputs inside and then get out a result that rank the cities among each other in order to select one above the others? Thank you.
Yeah, this is a really good question. And I think we talked about this a lot, because we realized when this report there was no way, with the sort of time and resource that we had, that we could look at all of the observatories. So as you say, yeah, we had to work out which ones to engage with and which not. To be honest, I think the main, so I should say, so we looked, as I say, at materials that had been produced by a number of different observatories. If you look at the comparative review, there is a basis of desk research, but the interviews were definitely limited. They were with these 32 institutions. What we wanted to do was get a spread globally, but actually we didn't then have a ranking within that. So we really just reached out, and I should thank Dennis, because a lot of this has been reaching out through the Global Urban Observatory network to say, we're doing this work, we would like to speak to observatories, and having observatories come to us in response to that. So really, aside from this sift to make sure that we had as many regions represented as we could, it was really the observatories that were responsive and were happy to speak to us. So I think we didn't proactively really sift out observatories. We just tried to get as good a geographic spread as possible. And as I say, it was really just putting the message out into the network and yeah, working with the kind of goodwill and the energy of those who came back.
Yeah, thank you, Carla. And also, I want to add that the reports of the index have been done from the UN Habitat, from the Global Urban Observatory, like the UMF and the Volunteer Report. All of this index is some kind of comparative, being between the cities and the urban observatories. Once the urban observatory take the main indicators and as you know, there is universal indicators and local indicators. Also, in the main indicator, it's concern. It's the baseline to compare it, to make comparative between many observatories and many cities. Thank you. I don't know. I don't find the hand raised. I have a question for Dennis until someone raises his hands. Dennis, what's the biggest challenge you have seen? I know you have worked in many urban observatories, like as you are from the data analytics section and Global Urban Observatory, and you have worked in Arabic cities and African cities, maybe European cities. What's the biggest challenge you have seen in the Arabic cities in urban observatory, and how we can fix this in your site, in your opinion?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Aref. And you choose the most difficult question to ask me. But perhaps since you asked me for the biggest challenge, the one I can really pick outright is the one on sustainability. And Carla also, I think, highlighted this. Many times, observatories that I've worked with a lot have been sort of projects initiated through maybe a funding cycle. And that usually creates challenges for long-term sustainability. So continuous availability of funding and having a team that really works full-time on this, or at least on a rolling basis, so that even when governance structures change, you have the value of those that we still maintain. This for me, I can pick perhaps is the biggest challenge. Maybe the second one I can highlight is the data availability and the quality. I know a lot of observatories. Of course, the main reason we created and we've been supporting observatories is to produce data, but data is also not a single person or single institution activity. Having all the relevant agencies really
do you think that the lack of data in Arabic cities related to the way of the methodology they collecting the data, or it's related to the data itself, something like the data itself is not correct, or it is something related to the collecting the methodology of collecting this data?
I'll not want to point specifically just to the Arab states, but really it's a common problem. Many times you have an issue of the indicator systems either being too narrow or too wide, and also the methods of collecting data. So like procedures like sampling, knowing who to interview at what point, really create a lot of different outputs. And I want to comment and say, like what we've seen in the Arab states, now this one specific, there's a lot of innovation in the area of data. I mean, if I quote maybe Qassim, Urban Observatory, where the continuous surveys that is being done on very important things on quality of life and related non-traditional subjects. For me, there's creativity in that area, but we've seen in many other places that there's a disconnect between what kind of information is needed versus how that information gets collected. And that's also why we try to end this as much as possible to provide guidance on the indicators and how the methodologies for this to be collected so that they are representative.
Yeah, thank you. As nobody raised hand, I have another question for Carla also. From your academic view, do you think it's better for the Urban Observatory to be related to the universities or the governments, municipalities, or which better for the Urban Observatory?
Yeah. It's
difficult question.
Yeah, it's a really tough question. So I think it really depends. I guess it so I'm trying to think where to start. So,
take your time.
Observatories, I think, have, as Dennis has said, and as we've sort of dug into, have multiple functions. And I guess part of it is where they're located and what is best, I guess, depends on the needs of the city often. So I think you have greater ability often to do certain things within an academic institution that you perhaps can't do within government, and vice versa. So I think part of it is actually around that. So I realize that's not answering your question, but that's sort of just saying it depends, because I think for example, the observatories hosted within academic institutions do tend to have a bit more freedom. You have this academic freedom element of what you can do and what you can say and who you're answerable to, and how public perhaps even you can be with some of the things that you are doing. But of course, you don't then necessarily have access to things happening within government, and you don't necessarily automatically have influence just because you're generating things that might be useful. It doesn't mean they will be used. So I think often when you're working directly within government, even though it of course still doesn't guarantee that, at least you're closer to those systems of use. So yeah, I think
But
it depends.
but you have a problem here because implementing the strategics and the decisions takes from policies takes from the Urban Observatory needs the governance sector, and the academic sector will enforce the theoretically studies for the Urban Observatory. It's the complication here. Hello?
Sorry, I think my connection might have gone a bit strange at the end of that, but I think I heard what you said. But no, I mean I think that's very much the case, and I think it's why I know I say I feel biased when I give it as an example, but I think like the Institute Observatory example and the Indian Institute for Human Settlements example are nice, but they've done both. And they've managed to have tea and various elements of local government that have then enabled them to sort of have the benefits of both worlds, but have also had to address the challenges of both worlds. But actually, what does that mean if your funding comes from a government, but you're based in a university? Does that mean that you do have the same freedom with what you can do, or that actually you really need to be doing what the government is asking you to do? I think you end up with other issues, perhaps. But yeah, I think some of the most effective ones we've seen have been partnerships between the two. I mean, just to go back to one of the early questions as well, one of the challenges often within research settings or kind of academic institutions for observatories is they will tend to come about because they've been funded by some kind of relatively standard research funding. And of course, that's time limited. So then you do have an observatory that is perhaps excellent for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but then the funding runs out and it's not guaranteed that will be renewed.
So yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your presence today, Carla and Dennis. It was a great presentation, and I am honored to have you today. I am honored also to have all my colleagues in this session, in this workshop, and for the colleagues who asked. And I will give the floor to Mr. Hisham now. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Aref. Thanks, Carla. Thanks, Dave, for your good presence and good presentations and good negotiation with my colleagues. شكرا الأخوة الأفاضل. كان هذا اللقاء المتميز مع حضور متميز شرفونا في هذا اللقاء الماتع. أيضا دكتور عارف لجهوده المتميزة في إعداد لهذا اللقاء. مستر دينيس أدى أداء رائع. دكتور كارلا أولسو أدت أداء رائع. الأخوة الراغبين في الحصول على شهادة الحضور لهذا اللقاء عليهم تعبئة نموذج التقييم الموجود في الشات. اللقاء كما تعلمون يبقى مادة متلفزة على قناة يوتيوب الخاصة بالجمعية، وأيضا على صفحة فيسبوك الخاصة بالجمعية، والمادة العلمية سيتم رفعها بعد إذن دكتور عارف على حساب لينكدين الخاص بالجمعية إن شاء الله. مرة أخرى أشكر ضيوفنا الكرام وأشكر الحضور المحترمين الذين يسرون دائما فعالياتنا. شكرا للأخ والصديق العزيز البروفيسور خالد زهران على مشاركته الرائعة، ولنا لهم لقاء قريب إن شاء الله. شكرا دكتور أحمد العنتري مشاركته المتميزة رئيس لجنة التدريب والتعليم بجامعة المهندسين المصرية. على وعد باللقاء إذا قدر الله البقاء وأمر باللقاء الجمعة المقبل مع ضيف جديد وموضوع جديد إن شاء الله. حتى هذا اللقاء أستودعكم الله الذي لا تضيع ودائعه، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you, Carla. Thank you. See you again. Thank you for all our partners. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.